Hello everyone, and welcome to the second or first part, however you're counting, of my Blender to Trainz tutorial series. In this one, we're just going to go over the basic, well, we already did that, I can't use that again. We're going to be using the shortcuts that I at least use the most, and we're going to get diagrams into Blender and start modeling the boiler and the smoke box and the supports and things like that. Okay, now this is how we left it in the last one. If we go and press 5, it will put us into orthographic view, and that will make everything look very flat. We can scroll in and move around by pressing down on the scroll wheel. You hold shift and the control wheel to move like that. If you want to move an object, you just press G in object mode and it'll move it around. So it's, yeah. This up here under the create tab, you can add a bunch of mesh things like cubes and planes and circles and cones and things like that. The things we use most are the cylinder and the cube. So I just spawned a cube up there. If I press 3, it'll bring us into the side view. I can zoom out and move over like that. So let's go into more detail. A cube probably isn't the best example. I'm going to use a cylinder. I'm going to bring that up. You can press tab to go in and out of edit mode, so tab like that, and then you press A to select or deselect everything. You press C and that in edit mode, and that will let you use the scroll wheel and you can change your selection size. So if I want it to be small, I can do that. If I want it to be big, I can do that. But if you want to select everything, or just like one part, I guess, you press Z, and that will bring you into the wireframe mode. And that limits any sort of object constraints, I guess. You can select through other objects. So, say if I only wanted to select this row down here, these vertices, if I did that in regular view mode without being in wireframe, it would only select the part that I can see. But if I do that in wireframe mode and press C, I can select everything, and I can do whatever I want. You press, or if you want to do that, you press Shift, Alt, and right-click, and that will select an entire loop of vertices. That works on cubes too, but it's kind of finicky. So if you have something selected and you want to make it round, you press Control and B in edit mode, and then pull with your mouse outwards, and you can use your scroll wheel to make it more detailed. So that's all very nice, but if you're making a model for Trainz, you don't want it to have all of these vertices, because, well, really they don't all matter, and you're not going to be paying too much attention to a certain part. So how do we make this smoother without killing your computer? Well, if we press Control Z, that will take us back to where it's like that. I can do Shift, Alt, right-click again, do the same thing, which is called beveling, and make it a little less detailed. Okay, so to get this looking smoother, we would go into edit mode by pressing Tab again, click A to select everything, press W, and then click Shade Smooth. This looks better, but it's still a bit weird, especially at the ends. To fix this, go up to the little World tab, go to the right, and you should see a little wrench. Click on that, and that's the Modifier tab. Click on the Modifier tab, and then click Edge Split. Now it looks a lot better. So, if you wanted to edit this more, you would not want it to be smooth. You would want it to look in its basic form like that. And to undo that, you just press W and shade flat. It does the opposite. And if I, for instance, wanted to make any large edits, I would make them before I did that. And what I just did there was I changed how I selected the vertices. Normally it'll be like that, and you select things kind of, you select these vertices right there. And that's what makes up these meshes. But if you wanted a different way to select things, you would go down here in the middle of your screen at the bottom. And the first one is vertices select. The second one is line select, which will select lines like that. And the third one is face select, and that will select a particular face on the mesh. So yeah, I'd say that those get used the most. But some other useful ones are if you go into face mode, go into wireframe view, press C and select something. You can press E to extrude, press S to size it up, and press E again, and now you have some sort of mosque temple thing. And yeah, that lets you make things bigger or smaller. And if you want to do the opposite of that, say if you wanted to only select this, which you can do again by Shift Alt right click, and you wanted to make an inset there, you would press I, drag in, so do the opposite of what you would do with a bevel, click, and then you can extrude in or out. So there you go. The last part, which is what I use a lot, is if you make another object, and let's just bring it up to, say, there, and we want to cut this main object out. Like, if we want to make a hole or an indent with this cube, what we do is we right-click on the object, go up to Add Modifier again, click Boolean, go to this little eyedropper, click the cube, and it'll disappear, but don't worry. Go over here to Operation, and go to Difference. Now click Apply, and make sure that you've made all the edits you want, because if you try to do certain things, like extruding after you've beveled, it can be a bit weird, but you don't always have to do that. And now if we delete this cube, we've made the indent, and that appears in the vertices select mode too. Face, line, anything. So that's permanently there. And if you want to go back, you press Ctrl Z. And you delete that, and it's back. Okay, let's actually start modeling. I spent way too much time trying to do the basics, which I should have done last time. I'm gonna press 1 to go in front view, and you may notice this little dot. We want that in the center. If you don't want that in the center, then that's just specific later on. We don't need to worry about it right now. Click Shift S and cursor to center. This is the cursor. It determines where all your objects spawn. If you go back into front view, now we can download images and drag them into Blender. Okay, on the right side of your screen, it should come like this when you download this file. Down below you should see background images, and it should have a check next to it. Go to Add Image, scroll down, open, and drag the diagram that you want. I'll leave a description to this in the description. Okay, I mixed that up. I'll leave a link to this in the description. These are made by Jamos. They make very, very nice diagrams. They're pretty accurate, and they help for scaling. So just drag those in there, or you can drag them in from the desktop or downloads or whatever. And click Open Image. Make sure it says the image name right here. And now they're there. Now you may notice that these aren't in scale. So how do we do that? Scroll down again, and you should see all of these funky new things. I don't know what they're called. And these pretty much determine how the image shows up. This one in the bottom right determines how big or small it is. This one in the top right determines how it's vertical placement, and the top left one determines its horizontal placement. And the one in the bottom left determines how it rotates. Yeah, whether or not it's rotated. Most of the time we want this at 0. Going back to the bottom right one, that's probably the one you're going to want to use most of the time. If you want to make smaller edits, you can hold Shift, and that'll make it a lot smoother and easier to control. It's pretty much a guessing game, so you have to go back and forth, figuring out how you want it to be done. Now we're starting with the front-facing image because that will determine whether or not the wheels line up, and then we base the side and top and all the rest off of this one. Okay, that looks pretty good. The flange of the wheel isn't really hitting against the rail. It's kind of in the center, so that's good. And now what we do is we repeat the same process with the side. So open new image, drag it in, open it, and now we just repeat the same values as the first one. And you can just type them in the same by clicking and just entering what you want. Okay, now you have the side image, but they show up at the same time. To fix this, we go up to Axis on whichever image you want to change, and go to All Views, and then change that to Front. And then press 3, and do the same thing, but instead change it to Right. And now they appear separately. Okay, now, the boiler. This is how, well, that's how I start most of my models, especially the TV series ones. It's a pretty basic shape. It's easy to do most of the time, and especially on chains, it's very, it's a good starting point. So making sure that your cursor is in the middle. Again, if it isn't, go Shift S, cursor to center, and make sure it is. We're going to create a cylinder. Down here, under where you spawned it, you will see Add Cylinder, and then you'll see vertices, radius, depth, and a bunch of other stuff that we don't need to worry about. The main thing is the vertices. This determines how detailed the sphere is. Depending on which part you're making, you don't want it to be too detailed because it could really just slow down your game. 32, which is the starting vertice count, is a pretty good for the boiler, so we'll keep it like that. Press 3, press R, and then if you don't want it to be kind of janky, because, I mean, there's no way to know if that's really straight or not, you can just right-click to make that go back. You can press R, and then Control, and that moves it in a blocky sort of way, which makes it really easy to control. So we can press S, and move our mouse in, and that will make it smaller. And using the arrows that show up here and dragging, you could move it into position. I like to start at the front, so the smoke box, and we press Tab and make sure you're in Faces mode. Click A, and that'll deselect everything. Press C again, click, and only this side will be selected. Now we're going to move this up to where the boiler meets the smoke box. And we're going to click E. Again, that means to extrude, and that's pretty much what the boiler is. Now James has boiler stripes. Not all of them have boiler stripes, but James does. So you want to drag the extrusion up into where the lining ends. You press to confirm that edit, and you can press E again, and it's pretty much the same process. Move it to the end of a piece of lining, extrude, and extend out the other end. And you can do that with this last piece of lining, and boom! Now you have your boiler. Again, if you want to make it smoother, you can press Tab, click A, press W, and then click Shade Smooth. And then you can press Tab to go out again, click Add Modifier, and then click Edge Split. And that makes it look a whole lot better. Okay, one thing you'll notice is that this is all white. There's no color, there's no variation. It just looks like a really long cylinder. You can't see the lining or anything like that. To fix this, we can go up here, next to the wrench icon, next to the world icon, and you should see material. Click on that, and then press New. Now, instead of being gray, the cylinder is now lighter gray. I would personally make this whatever color you want. I mean, if you're making another locomotive, whatever you want. I'll link in below another really good source which shows all of the colors that we used for the locomotives during the television series, and it'll help you get the colors more accurate. But for now, I don't have that in front of me. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna kind of estimate. The first part I'm gonna make is the black part. Go down to this little diffuse right there, and click the white, like that, and now you see this color wheel. Since we're making the smoke box, it's going to be black. We can drag on this little slider, make it a nice dark color, and that's the smoke box color. You can press Tab and Z again, and go back into edit mode. I'm gonna be on face select mode because that makes it easier. And I'm gonna press C, make the selection a bit smaller, and I'm gonna select all of the stripes on the boiler. Now, how do I make these another color without changing the color of the smoke box? Well, it's easy. Just go up here to this little plus sign, and it'll say add a new material slot. Click it, and then go down here again to new, and now you have a new material. We can go and change that material to be whatever you want it to be. Again, I'm just estimating. I don't really know how this looks right now, but I know it's yellow. Okay, now to get this on the model, because you'll notice if we press tab, it isn't there. If we press tab again, it'll bring us back. So to place this color onto the model, we go up here to Assign. It's right next to the material list, and click Assign. And now it shows up. And we can just repeat this step again by pressing Shift, Alt, right click on the boiler, and we can select the red parts. go to the plus icon again, new, click the white, and we can change it to the colors we need. Assign, and there we go. We have the basic starts of a locomotive. I'm gonna run through a few little, not really important, well, they are important, but they aren't that hard to do, especially on James. I'm gonna make sure again, before every time you spawn in a new object, make sure that your cursor is in the middle, because if it isn't in the middle and you spawn a new object, it's going to be really off center, and that is one of the worst things that can happen, because everything looks wonky and it's terrible and I hate it. So Shift S, cursor to center. Now I'm going to work on the firebox and these, well, I guess the rest of the smoke box, which carries on underneath the boiler. So press cube. I'm going to drag it up. I'm going to press S to scale it down. I'm going to go into side view with 3 and drag it to meet the cab. And drag it down a little bit so it meets the running board. Press tab, A, C, and I'm going to click. Bring it back to where the firebox, wait, is that, yeah, wait, yeah, bring it back to where the firebox starts. Okay, had a little bit of an identity crisis there. Bring it up to the top of the firebox, and yeah, that's the basic shape of the firebox. You can go here, yeah, if you want something to have the same color as another thing, and you don't want to make a new material, you can go here, right next to the little new sign, and click. And it'll bring up all of your previous materials. And you can just press the material that you want, and it'll show up on the new object. Now, you may notice that there's a band running down. Wait, actually, before I do that, we need to make this curve in the firebox, because it isn't just a cube. How do we do that? Well, if you go into edit mode with tab, making sure you're selecting Blender, you might see, well, yeah, you go down to the middle, bottom middle, and click edge select. Now, making sure that you're in the side view mode, you press C and select along the top. And because we were in side view mode and we had edge select, it only selected these two lines. Now, if we bevel with Control and B, it bevels along those lines. Okay, that's pretty good. So to get this sort of curve, we just bevel and well, I like to be in front-facing view, and we bring it to the basic shape of the firebox. You can line it up on the sides or the top. Because James's firebox is kind of a weird shape, it doesn't really work well with Blender, but you can fix that later. Now that we have it beveled how we want, we can use the scroll wheel and make it as detailed as we like. Remember, it doesn't have to be too detailed, and when we have it the way we want it, we just click, and that commits it. Now you can go back into vertice select mode and press C again and hold shift. Now you can select the vertices you don't want to edit, and you can make edits to the other parts and make the curve on the firebox a little more consistent. And of course, once you're done selecting the ones you don't want to edit or the ones you want to edit, you can just right click and make your edit. And that takes you out of object selection mode. or vertices selection, I should say. Okay, now that we have that the way we want it, we can add that boiler band, or that stripe, I guess. To do this, we go into edit mode with tab again, and press Control R. That makes a loop cut. And you'll see that there's this purple stripe running down the middle of whatever you're trying to make a loop cut on. In this case, the firebox. If you press click, it becomes a set of vertices, and you can move your mouse to make it line up however you want. In our case, we can still move it, so I'm just going to right click again, and that's going to confirm it. Or if you have it in a specific place you want it to be, you can just click when you have it the way you want. Now that we have it at the front of one of our stripes, we can do the same thing and move it to the end of the stripe. Using Shift, Alt, right click, we can select the other loop of vertices, go up to the Add Material slot, go down here and click the yellow, and then click Assign. Now we have the stripe. You might also notice that the curve on the end of the firebox isn't as sharp. There's actually a curve there. And to get this on a firebox, it's very simple. You go Tab, make sure that you're in Edge Select mode, deselect everything else with A, go Shift Alt again, and right click, and that will select the entire edge or face of the firebox. What you want to do is press C again, hold Shift, and click the bottom one, because the bottom isn't curved, it's only all of these sides. Now, making sure that only these sides are selected, you can press Ctrl and B and drag out, and use the scroll wheel to make it as detailed as you want. Now we have a nice curve there. And again, to make it smoother, you can just press Tab, A, W, Shade Smooth, and now you can go over to the edge split area. Now, one thing you might notice, and this happens a lot, is that there's this, if you right click on the model and press G to move it, you'll notice that there's this line. It looks like the shading is broken on the firebox, and that's because it kind of is. Right click again to make it go back to the way it was. Now basically, this is because we used the bevel tool on a very complicated shape. And to fix this, we go to Face Select, press A to deselect, press C to go into selection mode, and select that face. Now we go to we go to W and click Shade Flat, and now the problem is fixed. So we have the firebox, the boiler, and the smoke box. Now what I'm going to cover in this tutorial is the base of the firebox and the base under the boiler. This is much the same, but depending on your locomotive, it may not line up. Because James is a bit of an odd example, we can just go into the front-facing view, go into edit mode by pressing, go into wireframe mode by pressing Z, go into edit mode by pressing Tab, making sure we're in face select, pressing C to enter selection mode, and select all of these bottom vertices. Make sure you're in wireframe mode so that all of these get selected. You move around and see that they are in fact all selected. Now press E and move your mouse downwards. And you'll see that all of the materials have moved along with that extrusion. But it's curved at the bottom down here, and we don't want that. So press 1 again, edit mode, and we want to flatten this. So go to hold down with your left mouse button on the arrow of these vertices while they're all selected. Click S and then hold Control. And now when we move to the middle, it will flatten all of those vertices. We can move it down to the running board. Okay, that's pretty good. Oh, yeah, I probably should have fixed that, huh? Okay. One thing you'll notice is that the smoke box support continues too far with the actual boiler. The boiler goes off a bit rather than just continually being supported. To fix this, you could have just added a loop cut before we extruded the base. But there's another much simpler solution. Just press C and select that base. Press E to extrude it. Press Z, C, select. And now we can just move it back to where it's supposed to be. And move the front of the boiler. And now we fixed it. One final thing is that it's not like that on the model itself. You can see there's a very hard defined edge where the base meets, where the support meets the boiler. But the shading kind of makes it look a bit like they smooth into each other. This is just because of the edge split modifier and the shade smooth. If you want to get rid of that, you can do the same thing we did with the firebox on both sides, make sure. Or you can add an edge loop like this, and that should make the edge look a bit sharper. But if you don't want to use a lot of vertices, you can use the shade flat method. So press W again, and then click shade flat, and that pretty much does the same thing. And if you want to, I should have mentioned this before. If you want to save what you're working on, because Blender has a habit of crashing when you've just spent 5 hours making something, you can just go up to File in the top left, click Save As, and then put in what you want. So I'm just going to go TV series James. And I'm going to click, and now it should appear as normal. Then you click Save as a Blender file, and now if we go to Open Recent, TV series James and SignalWorks 3D Standard Gauge are 2 different .blend files. So if we click on Standard Gauge, it'll bring us back to the beginning, and if we go to Open Recent again and click TVS James, it'll bring us back to James. Now if you've made an edit, say for example, you want to change how the boiler is, you can just go up here, and instead of creating a new file each time, you can just go above to Save, and that will save the new edit. Alrighty, I hope that helped some. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, anything like that, I'm on Discord, and you can just leave a a comment in the comment section. I'll put all of the links I used in the description. And yeah, I'll try to make more updates as they come along. Thank you.